Today on the Relationship Renovation podcast, we are in part 3 of the attachment series. And in this episode, we talk about secure attachment.
But what's really important with when you start building secure attachment is that that space is now allowed. So the judgment is not there. It's like, hey, I've got you. I can see you're really struggling.
We talk about differentiation, which is really the process of breaking out of patterns from your childhood.
But I remind myself, like, wait, I'm an adult right now. I actually have a choice. Who are you supposed to be? Not who have you become because of your alcoholic parent or the trauma that happened.
And how that applies to you and your partner connecting more deeply. So please stay tuned. I know you're going to get a heck of a lot out of this.
Hello, all, and welcome to the Relationship Renovation Podcast. I'm Tarah Kerwin.
And my name is EJ Kerwin.
Always so happy to be here on a Friday morning and it's our podcast episode airing day.
Yeah, we actually received just an amazing email yesterday, and we'll read it eventually. But it was just from someone who was having some struggles in their relationship. Their husband started listening to the episodes.
Yeah.
And this woman said that their relationship has completely changed in the last 3 months.
Just from listening to the podcast.
Yep, from listening to the podcast, and that they've seen like sort of the security and confidence of their children change in the past 3 months. And it was just like, sometimes we get so far in the weeds as far as just our own life and the business and everything else. And just to hear somebody say like, what you're doing changed our relationship, is changing our life, was like, it was like a relief. It was like, we're doing this for a reason. It's helping.
I know, although we're really busy and we haven't been able to make the time we would like to have for us, because I know that will happen. But like my heart feels so happy. Like even if we could just help one couple, that is why we do this work. So
absolutely.
Thank you. And yes, we will read it eventually. We just have to get
all right. Well,
approval.
We're jumping into attachment part 3.
Building a secure foundation. It is our heart's work to help couples build secure attachment together. And we've identified the insecure attachment pieces with the avoidant and the anxious and fear-based dismissive. Yeah. And today we really want to focus on components of what a secure attachment looks like and how to get there.
Yeah. And just want to make sure if you've never listened to the podcast before or you've missed a couple episodes, this is part 3. So if you want to go back to episodes 177, 178, that's part 1 and part 2 of attachment, where we really set the context for today. Like how do you create that secure attachment? Part 1 really just goes over, what is this whole thing called attachment theory? How does it relate to you? Part 2 goes into, okay, what are the attachment styles and what are the inherent sort of struggles within each one? And then now here we are, part 3. What do you do? What do you do and what are you striving for?
I think let's just start with defining what a secure attachment looks like and feels like.
Sounds like a great place to start.
For couples. Do you want me?
Yeah, you got it. You go.
Okay. So when I think of a secure attachment with couples, the image I get is like, oh, couples are still going to argue, but there's not this threat to the relationship. It feels like, oh, we're going to argue and that's okay because there's trust, there's respect, there's healthy conflict resolution, there's the ability to have difficult conversations, there's shared goals and values. It's just like couples being on the same page even when things go off. That's kind of the feeling and the visual I get when I think of secure attachment.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about this a bunch because also we got asked, we were on Psych Talk, which will come out in the next pretty soon.
That was fun.
Another podcast had us on, and she asked us about what is secure attachment, and for me, as I think about it more and more, I'm just thinking about security. Really taking that first word and expanding. I feel a lot of security in my relationship. We can get into disagreements, I can go through a hard time. You can go through a hard time. We can struggle with our connection a little bit. Like we can struggle with intimacy, physical, emotional intimacy, but I still feel internally secure. I feel secure in our relationship.
Yes, there's a feeling of that you can express your needs. There's this emotional closeness and it feels okay. Instead of, right, the couples that present for counseling are usually like not on each other's team and they're really defensive with each other and there's a lot of blame and rejection. So this is like, oh, I feel emotionally close and I can share my needs and wants, even if it might be hurtful or difficult to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other, like just on a personal level, as I've seen our relationship transition over the years, a lot of the security also comes from like when we do go through difficult times, that it doesn't feel like the entire like it's just falling to pieces, like it's over. Like there's just this like, okay, it's going to be all right. It's going to be okay.
Well, that's one of the components, right? Trust and reliability. Like, even though it's not okay, I can trust that eventually we will get through this, right? And another piece is the conflict resolution. Like a lot of couples who don't know how to have healthy communication skills will sweep things under the rug or avoid it. It builds up. We have to be able to manage it and resolve it. And so couples who do have secure functioning are able to resolve their differences. And if they do have differences and they can't be resolved, that's okay too. They just accept each other for it.
All right. So what are we going to talk about now? We're going to talk about...
Well, I'm still kind of with the components of secure functioning. So interdependence is a big one. It's like the ability to be yourself even within a relationship. And again, I see a lot of codependence within unhealthy relationships or insecure attachments. So the idea of interdependence is like, oh, if you want to go golfing or go play pickleball, like I want you to do those things because that's like who you are and it makes you feel really good about yourself. And it kind of gives you that ability to, right, do something that is your passion, not necessarily mine. Again, there's a lot of couples that struggle when they get together and, right, like, oh, you're going to go do that now, but you have a family and we do this. And so it's the idea of autonomy within a relationship.
Yeah.
It's another thing that defines it, which is really important because we're going to be getting into this other definition of differentiation, which we'll get into it in a little bit. But the idea of autonomy within a close, intimate relationship is really important within a secure, functioning relationship.
Well, and I think interdependence also beyond just like, hey, you can have your other things and I can have my other things, is also like just like again, back to that word secure and security, is like, you cannot be okay, Tarah. Like there can be times where you're really struggling and I can still be okay, and also like I cannot like internalize it and be like, oh, it's about me. It's about that she's not happy with me or that she's criticizing me. It's like interdependence is like, I can still be solid and you can be going through a hard time. One, that's great for me because then I'm not like, if you're falling apart, I'm falling apart.
Which happens a lot.
But then
in relationships.
Also, there's like, I can be solid for you in those moments. If I have interdependence and I feel secure with myself, I feel secure in our relationship, then when you do inevitably hit a really difficult time, I can be there better for you because I'm not reacting, and vice versa. You can be there for me when I'm really struggling because you're not like, oh, what did I do? Or it's me. He's mad at me.
So first of all, listeners, this is so important because couples really struggle with this. Like if your partner's in a bad mood or really having a rough time or in just a place of suffering, like we want to judge it and we want it to go away and we want to say, no, thank you, because it's affecting our own sense of self, right? And we're going to get into this idea next. But what's really important when you start building secure attachment is that space is now allowed. So the judgment is not there. It's like, hey, I've got you. I can see you're really struggling. And I'm just going to, you don't know this. I haven't told you this. But I'm going to tell you.
Sounds like it might be good.
Because it just happened last night. So we were watching, don't judge. a reality show, The Valley. Okay, we just love Bravo now. BravoCon, just saying. And they're in a new relationship, right? And so this guy was like planning this whole romantic thing at her apartment with candles and a massage. And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, like, when is the last time EJ did something?
When was the last time there were rose petals on our floor?
I'm thinking, right? If ever. And I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, I started to go to like this place of almost like a victim, like, man, we don't have, like, I don't have. And then I was like, actually, hold on, stop. EJ has never been that kind of person to like provide me with romance in that way. I am okay without it. I love that there are more romantic guys out there, but I choose you. And I know that you want to try to be. And I could see that because you looked at me and said, I should do more romantic things.
I can drop some more romance. I think the last time we had rose petals was on our honeymoon.
And that was from the lodge putting it on.
No, I asked them to do it. That's what
sweet.
He did on the Bravo show. He had his friends doing it. He wasn't like.
But I just want to say, like, because we have secure functioning now, like, it did not cause an argument. It did not cause me to be like, oh my gosh, he's not the one for me. He doesn't do a romantic thing. No, I was able to like understand, like, I love you, and maybe that's not your strength, but that's cool because you do other things like leave me little coffee notes in the morning. But again, just a little example. I hope that was helpful.
We were, it's interesting because we were sort of on the same page in that moment, which I think has to do with a little bit of maybe what we're going to get to, differentiation, which is like we're kind of on a pathway together here, in that you were thinking like, oh, I want more of this in my life. And then I was internally thinking in that moment, like I could do more of that. Like that, that really is something I'm capable of, but don't think to do. And I think like that would be just separate thing. And this might be useful to couples out there as well. Like sometimes when you say you're not that kind of guy, it feels like, oh, like that doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
But because I think I could be that type of guy, but I don't always think to be it, or I don't know how to do it, or I'm not instinctively doing it in the way maybe you would like it, but I'd like to, so I want to be more that kind of guy, just so you know.
And just, it goes both ways. Just because like I'm the woman and you're the man, like I used to do cute little scrapbooks for you. And I mean, I could, amp up my game too. Okay. So let's go into the idea of differentiation, which is family systems theory, right? And differentiation says the more differentiated you are, meaning the healthy sense of self that you have, is you still remain emotionally close to those around you, but you have a strong sense of autonomy outside of your family of origin. So basically what that's saying is if you had a childhood where parents had really healthy boundaries and they were, you had a secure attachment, your needs were met, like you probably feel really good becoming the person that you want to become in the world instead of pressure from your family to be something that maybe you're not.
Yeah. I'm trying to like really like put this in the most like sort of, layman's terms in differentiation, is that we have ways in which we adapt as kids, right? And a lot of it's based upon our needs, right? And when we come from a very secure family, we have to do less adaptations because the needs are getting met, right? And so, for instance, if you became somebody who stopped having needs, who like your parents just weren't paying attention, or someone who like when you had a need, they reacted, they got angry with you, and so you adapted. Differentiation is that you got away from those adaptations, that you've gained insight into like, okay, those adaptations are not healthy, and I'm moving away from the way in which I sort of instinctively changed to deal with my family of origin. And I found a new way. I found my way, not my instinctive adaptive way.
Yes. The idea is to get to a high level of differentiation to have the most success in being a secure sense of self while still remaining emotionally connected to those that you love.
And the interesting thing in attachment research is that we tend to pick a person
Yes.
who's adapted about the same, they've differentiated about to the same level from their family of origin, right?
Absolutely.
So for somebody who has no idea that some of our adaptive traits are just happening and aren't healthy, we pick somebody who's at that same place or close to it.
Right. And just know differentiation is a lifelong process because we're always going through different transitions developmentally as well. And it's also impacted by like cultural pieces, life experiences, family dynamics. So there's just like a lot involved. And we could have like a 3-hour episode on differentiation, but it's a lifelong process to constantly move through and cultivate your sense of self that feels healthy for you. Because again, we get into relationships that can feel unhealthy and then we get lost in those. And so it's just a lifelong process. You're not like, oh, I'm really highly differentiated and you're not.
Yeah.
That's not how it goes.
Well, and I think like one of the hardest things, and I think this is like a really important thing for people to hear is it's some people have come out of backgrounds where it is like so clear that it was like an incredibly unhealthy environment that you grew up in, right? And so it's obvious that like I have to change some of my patterns because I grew up in such an unhealthy place that I'm unable to have a healthy relationship. But then there's a lot of people who are in like this gray zone between healthy attachment and unhealthy attachment, and they were relatively functional households with just like some minor stuff or moderate levels of dysfunction within a family, and you don't think that your adaptive traits are actually creating problems. And I relate to that a lot, where it was like an eye-opening, and there was almost this like defensiveness around my family, and just accepting that like, hey, there were just some unhealthy stuff going on.
Right.
It doesn't make them bad people, and it doesn't make me a bad person coming out of it, but just that I do need to shift things about myself in order to have a healthy relationship with my partner.
What I do is when I get into those reactive states, because a big piece of being differentiated is recognizing your own emotional reaction versus like what you learned as a child. And people around me were very explosive and impulsive. And so I still lose my stuff at times. Like I can feel that. But I remind myself like, wait, I'm an adult right now. I actually have a choice. I can choose to react that way because that's what like or unconsciously wants to just happen because it's what I know, it's what I learned. But when I remind myself that I'm an adult, that's huge. And that's just me continuing the process of like, I'm not there anymore. I don't have to be scared anymore, and I don't have to react like this anymore, and I don't have to have that rage or anger.
But it's hard, right? Because it's so instinctive. It happens in a flash of a second, and it seems like you're reacting appropriately on some level, right?
Yeah.
And it's that eye-opening of like, oh my gosh, this behavior is from my anxious avoidant. This is from my completely avoidant.
Well, so this is why this is important, because we're here to help you build secure attachment. The levels of differentiation play very close with that, because the more differentiated we are, the more secure attachment we will have, the more satisfied our relationship will be. So the idea is, how do you become more differentiated?
That's the big question, right, Tarah?
Right? It's where do we want to start? Because there's a lot of components to it, right? Healthy emotion regulation, awareness, personal reflection.
I think that the origin point is insight.
Yeah.
Right? Because the navigating your own emotional reactivity, finding ways to have healthy boundaries, to communicate clearly, those to me are like the tools and the ways in which we create change. But for me, it was about a lot of like really looking at my family and looking at how I adapted, right? And that there were certain dynamics where like personally, I just got like good at sort of like shutting things down.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that was like the first step in sort of like recognizing that some of my behaviors that I thought were just purely my strengths were actually, I wasn't really, like you use this metaphor, like I wasn't really driving the bus.
Yeah.
I was a passenger to my own adaptations, and for me, that's about like and that's why we do all this psychoeducation and did this first part of this, the second part, and now the third part of this is like, I couldn't have done that without just having an awareness, having an insight that it even exists.
And for me, right, because this is why we take couples through their genogram and timeline and relationship timeline, because we really want them to understand and connect the pieces that might limit like levels of differentiation. And for me, like I was always expecting something external to soothe me. And so when it didn't, I was like pissed, like here I am, like my needs not getting met again. How dare this? Like, and I had this like sense of entitlement, like, gosh dang it, I deserve this. Like I had so many unmet childhood needs because of all the trauma and neglect. Like I freaking deserve this. So this sense of entitlement, right? My wounded child like brought that into adult. And then I just expected and had very high expectations of my partners, aka you as well. And so I had to start looking at that. And now, right, how I've done my work with the personal reflection, emotional awareness, emotional reactivity, I'm like, oh, like I can handle this. Like I don't have to have external situations that are going to help me feel okay. I know how to self-soothe. I mean, not all of the time, but I'm getting better at the majority of the time. And so that was kind of my process. Yeah. Instead of you having to like do all these things to make me feel important or good, I now make myself feel important and good. You're still there and you complement my growth in a great way and you encourage it, but ultimately like I have total control and it feels really good.
Yeah. I mean, what that reminded me of is in our program, we have this relational cognitive restructuring exercise, which is like smack dab in the middle. And it's after we've talked about some like just how to regulate yourself, your nervous system, and some basic like communication. We have a communication series in there as well. And it gets to this point where you take the trigger. You take the thing your partner does, and instead of like most couples do, and like we've certainly done, instead of focusing on, Tarah, stop doing that. Like I've told you 100 times, don't do that thing. Instead of me focusing on her, it's a process where I go internally and I look at when that trigger happens. It's just a trigger. It's just stimulus. It's neutral until I assign value to it. Mm-hmm. And at that point, then I look at what is the very first thoughts that come into my head.
Yeah,
I can't believe this. Like this is BS. What are the feelings that I'm having? Like I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling separate. What are my actions? I literally feel my body pulling away. I look for a way to get out of the conversation. But where it all lands back to is, what are the negative core beliefs that are being activated in that moment? And to me—
And where did they come from?
And what does it remind me of, for 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago? And for me, that's like my empowerment in shifting those negative attachment adaptations, is that I internalize negative messages about myself and the world around me. And the only way for me to truly change it is to say, no, I am safe. Yeah. I am okay. I am enough. As cheesy as those things sound.
Well, you're challenging the negative thought patterns from those belief systems that we create early on as children to make sense of the world, but then they don't make sense as adults. So I love that. So you're hearing a lot of different things, but really to become more highly differentiated, it's a personal reflection, some insight, especially when we're triggered, because that's how we grow. Gaining a sense of autonomy, practicing assertive communication, seeking support. If you're like, I wouldn't even know how to start this, seek out some therapy, or there's some great books out there that can help you start to really understand, like, what are my negative core beliefs and how did I learn them? And those aren't working for me anymore. And how do I not like put that on my partner and bring it back to me? So there's a lot of, different ways to understand and become more differentiated. And really what that does is, the whole reason why we're doing this, and even in my sessions with my couples and individuals, I'm like, I want to support you in becoming the person that you are supposed to be and not have all this other crap that people put on us that we carry. Like, let's take that off, let's de-roll, and let's focus on who you are. What is your human spirit? Who are you supposed to be? Not who have you become because of your alcoholic parent or the trauma that happened or emotional, physical, sexual abuse. Like, who are you supposed to be? And shedding that, right? Again, you can call that differentiation, right? It's free. It feels really good. And you do not have to continue to be in this place of suffering because it's no longer yours.
Well, and it can be like this incredibly empowering shift. Because even in the moments where because oftentimes the times that I'm triggered with you, it is because you're in a place of suffering. And when you get triggered and then I get triggered by your trigger and my attachment stuff comes up, everything just goes to hell in a handbasket really quick. But then I'm totally disempowered. I'm feeling like crap myself. And so if I have the ability to be like, hey, Tarah is doing that thing or she is in that place, but it's not a reflection on me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still enough. I still feel okay. I'm empowered. I'm okay, I'm safe, in this moment. My life is still, no matter what happens, is going to be okay. And then the wonderful part is that it flips around.
Yes.
And then I can be there for you.
I was just going to say that. Yes.
I can be there for you. I'm not reactive. I'm not blaming you. You're not feeling judged.
Mm-hmm.
You felt judged since you were a little girl and people were horrible to you.
I was judged
at school.
There was no feeling. It was happening.
Exactly. And so I don't pile on as well. And then this whole thing of differentiation, you and I are moving on the path together.
Mm-hmm.
And because then when I'm triggered, you don't get triggered as much. And you help me through it.
I'm trying to understand. Yeah.
And we're pulling ourselves up out of all these unconscious reactions that just screw us up.
And by no means is this a light switch. You don't just, I'm going to get highly differentiated today.
Yeah.
It's a process. It's lifelong. But you keep getting better at it and you start to see the benefits from it. And when our couples usually are finished with our model, our relationship renovation model, they have become differentiated and they have built a secure relationship. And research shows securely attached couples have a much higher satisfaction rate. There's more organic physical intimacy, affection, carefreeness, more play. Yes, please. We all deserve that. So thank you for listening.
Absolutely. And, I do I really, sometimes I'm cautious about the whole selfish self-promotion thing. But, we've created this model, this relationship renovation model, and our therapists do an incredible job here in Tucson, helping couples move through it. But we also have, our online program, Relationship Renovation at Home, and it really can be a launching point for you guys as couples of doing this work. And it takes you through step by step. There's videos. There's lessons. It takes you through this genogram process. It talks about how to, regulate your nervous system. It takes you through that relational cognitive restructuring. So, check it out. It's on our website, Relationship.Renovation.com. It's under our online programs.
And can I just say, if you are a listener who's already done it, because we have people doing this worldwide, and you want to share your story and be on our podcast, reach out. That would be awesome. I would love to interview you.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's been fun talking about this today.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this, and it's fun to talk about because today I really felt connected to we still got work to do. We know that.
Always.
We still have work to do in our relationship.
Say what?
But I really feel like this differentiation thing is we've both done a lot of differentiation.
High five.
Yeah, in the last 5 years especially.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's helping. It's
and it helps our kids to be able to be who they need to be too. So we supported
each other a lot this weekend dealing with homework times of hellish
I didn't feel
homework.
bad for losing my crap at Mia because I got firm, and I'd be like, oh God.
And I had your back because I didn't react and go into my place of what I remember having horrible homework times as a kid. I didn't become that kid in those moments.
So lots of positive benefits.
Cool.
Yep.
Right on.
So thank you so much for listening. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.